It's been just over 2 months since we started uploading daily shorts and videos to this channel, and it's been a blast. Throughout these 2 months, we've been focused on one main goal, getting a prototype of our combat system working. In this devlog, I want to walk you through the completion of stage 1 of our combat prototype and discuss the next steps of our game. We haven't actually introduced our game yet, so here's a quick overview. Our game is a hack and slash adventure with strong narrative and puzzle solving component. I won't spoil much of the story or puzzles, but I can tell you the game is currently named Tomb of Memories. You'll play as Sam, an adventurous hedgehog exploring a mysterious dungeon filled with magic. Our inspirations are Hades, Death's Door, and The Legend of Zelda, particularly the game feel and shrine elements. We'll reveal bits and pieces of the game as we develop it, but I won't give everything away just yet. Now let's dive into the plan. Our goal isn't to work on this game forever, but the truth is games take time, and we only have so much of it each day. So the plan is to prototype our game concepts and create an alpha version with all major systems in place, even if the actual game content is limited. When I say major systems, I mean combat, dialogue and cutscenes, interactables and collectibles, puzzle rooms, and saving and loading. We're aiming to complete a horizontal slice of the game, one that's modular enough to quickly expand into a vertical slice we can playtest. By playtest, I mean with you guys. Your feedback has been incredible so far, ideas on what you like, what could be improved, and new feature suggestions. Thank you so much, and if you're enjoying this sort of content, consider liking and subscribing, and that would help out a lot actually. Thank you. Once we have both the slices, we'll be able to fill in the gaps, and since we're involving the community early, future iterations should go a lot smoother. Right now, we're finishing up the first pass of our combat system. What's left at this stage is adding another enemy type, the shooter enemy. We already have a base enemy that chases and attacks the player, but we're missing a stationary enemy that fires projectiles. So let's get to work. Alright, so the first step I'm taking is creating the shooter enemy script and making it not move, so let's see if that works. So you can see there's our shooter enemy. I used the same texture for our blob enemy and just changed the modulate, but I'm going to do some placeholder art in a minute. But you can see that it's already attacking us when we enter the area, but it doesn't reset the attack. Well, we did something. The shooter enemy is not getting knocked back, but it still gets stuck on the attack state. We're not taking damage since the shooter enemy attack will be shooting a projectile, so that will be the thing that damages us. But it should reset the attack, and it isn't yet. And as you can see here, I'm just literally returning a lot of stuff. Whenever we get to the chasing state, I'm just switching to idle, and I'll try to see what's up with this. Okay, so I found out the issue, and it was right here. So before we were just calling attack animator play attack, and in Godot, if you're already on that animation, it ignores it, and this is actually quite handy when you're handling movement animation, for example. But in this case, if the enemy was still in the attack animation, even if it was on the last frames of it, it would not play the animation again. So what I did here is, if the current animation is the attack animation, then we cue the attack animation to play next. And it is working, as you can see here. Right, so now we have to make the enemy instantiate a projectile to attack the player. Let's go. Right, so here's our projectile script. It's very simple, so we'll instantiate a packed scene with this script on the enemy, and we'll pass it in a movement direction. In this direction will already have the speed included and an attack data. We're duplicating here the attack data so that we can set the aggressor of the attack data to the projectile, so if there's knockback, it will be relative to the projectile, not to the enemy that shot it. And then, whenever something enters the detection area, we explode the projectile, and for now, we won't have any visual indicator, but we'll damage anything that's detected within the area, and then we'll delete this node. Right, so now let's create our projectile scene. And this is it, this is our projectile scene. We have here the root with the script. Then this area 3D is the one that is going to do the detection. Actually, I'm going to make it with the exact size of the projectile. I mean, yeah, a bit bigger seems good. And then just this mesh instance of a sphere. Right, now we have to instantiate this in the enemy when they attack. So actually there's a couple things that I forgot here. So if you were wondering why the projectile wouldn't hurt enemies, for example, that's because we're using collision layers. The projectile is on the enemy collision layer, but it's masked to only detect the player and the level. So it will not explode when detecting enemies, because actually it won't detect them. And then I also added here a destroy time because I remembered that it can actually maybe collide with nothing, so it's good to have a time after which we know that the projectile will be destroyed. Right, here in the shooter enemy I think I have the attack set up. We're instantiating the projectile, then I'm setting its global position to a shoot point, which is an O3D of our shooter enemy, calculating the shoot direction to go towards the player with the projectile speed, and then I'm launching it. Alright, everything's set up. Let's try to test it out in game. You didn't actually think that this was going to work on the first try, right? Okay, let's test this out in game. Okay, that feels way better. Let me see if I can... Oh shit, okay. Maybe it needs to be a bit slower still. Huh, something happened though. Oh, it lost the reference to the player. Right, yeah, this solved the issue. So basically when we attack and we don't have a reference to the player, we want to check the state. Because we probably shouldn't be in the attack state any longer, and then we return. Although, what I'm thinking here is, instead of returning, we shouldn't use the player position here. We should probably get the player position when we start attacking. And I think that's more fair, so whenever the player sees that the shooter enemy is starting its attack animation, they can just get away. So let's try that out. Yeah, that feels way fair. And we don't have to change the projectile speed. It's just the player needs to be constantly walking. Although, wait. The time difference between the start attack and the attack is too great, so we can just walk a bit and then the enemy won't attack us. So probably what we want to do is have an attack animation that's very fast. And as soon as the player sees that the shooter enemy is going to attack, it needs to get out of the way. I think that's the way to go. But right, now we're going to add a placeholder for our shooter enemy. Okay, so here's my wonderful shooter enemy. Yeah, it's a flower, and basically it's closed, then it starts to open on the attack animation, and here it attacks. Don't judge me too harshly, I made this in 2 minutes just to have a proof of concept, okay? Hey, I got it working, and it looks really cool actually. I mean, it's placeholder art, but you get an idea of how the attack will work. You can see that it opens up a little bit when it starts the attack animation, and that lets the player know when it will attack. Yeah, I like it. I really do. Now, I know the combat isn't finished yet, and this isn't a complete horizontal or vertical slice of it, but we've got the basics down. The abilities work, and player-enemy encounters feel solid. For now, I'm setting the combat system aside to focus on other game systems. While playtesting, I'll keep notes on areas to improve, bugs, and ideas, like this spear suggestion. But for now, it's time to move on. With the combat prototype done, we're shifting focus to another major system that's already made some progress, but needs a lot more love and care: the dialogue and cutscene systems. While we're currently writing the game's narrative, we won't be using any of it during the system development. What I want to create is a system of narrative triggers that can display cutscenes or dialogues from a file, and the lines of dialogue can adapt to the game's state, so showing different lines of dialogue depending on player choices, for example. Anyways, thank you so much. Actually, we've got a surprise for you in this first devlog. We have a new and improved Sam model. Maya So did an incredible job with it. Sam looks fresh, and I'm thrilled with the new design. She's been studying the game's visual direction and nailed it. Show her some love in the comments. Thank you so much for the daily support on this channel. Making these videos has given me an extra reason to work on the game daily, and interacting with this community has been incredibly motivating. So for the foreseeable future, we'll keep this up. Anyways, see you tomorrow.